All right,
Let's get into it.
So, hey everyone, my name is Angelo, aka Darth Mexican from the Geek Life, and I am with J Gonzo, a wonderful artist, and he's an amazing work. But just in case people out there don't know who you are, would you be able to take a moment to actually introduce yourself?
Okay, I'm J Gonzo. I'm the creator of Mano Del Destino. I'm the writer and artist and publisher and distributor on that comic. I've been kind of peripheral to the industry for a lot of years. I worked for a comic company as an art director, and then about 7-ish years ago, I kind of got let go from that job and wanted to know what my next steps were in the industry, and decided to make La Mano del Destino, just put it out in the world. I've been doing that for a few years now, and it's been pretty well received.
Nice. Congratulations, by the way.
Oh, thanks. Yeah. It's thank you. Yeah.
So a lot of questions that or a question I like to ask artists all the time that I love, because my parents are artists, so and I love hearing their story, is what is your origin story of any getting into art? Like, was there a family member that walked you into it, or was it something you just passion you ran with?
In a word, I would say Spider-Man.
Okay.
So I was a kid. I loved the Spider-Man cartoon segment that was on Electric Company.
Yeah.
And I always loved to draw. Like so drawing was always a part of my life, even before I knew Spider-Man. I love the idea that art could happen, and I was pretty good at it. So literally, my dad tells a story of me being 4 and grabbing paper and pencils in a very serious way and being like, I'm going to draw. And then I sat and drew for 2 solid hours.
Yeah.
And he looked at me and was like, yeah, kids don't do that. Art is going to be part of his life. So I always kind of drew stuff, that I found I could copy things easily. And then I discovered the Spider-Man segment of Electric Company, which was great. If you guys haven't looked it up, just look up Electric Company Spider-Man. It was a really weird 2D, 3D kind of thing that they did, but very 70s, kind of horrible, but also amazing. And so I always loved Spider-Man, and then the 60s cartoons were still in reruns in the 70s when I was a kid. And then what really capped it for me was I grew up in Orange County, California.
Yeah.
And just inside the LA County line. I just barely Orange County. But my grandparents all lived in LA County. They lived in Pico Rivera and Montebello. And so I would go to their houses, and they got the LA Times. We got the Orange County Register. The difference between the two papers is the Orange County Times or the Orange County Register did not carry the Spider-Man daily strip. LA Times did. So I go to my grandparents, and I just saw that Marvel house style they had in the late 70s, early 80s, and I just it was so different than everything else in the comic pages, right? Because you got Doonesbury and Bloom County and stuff and even Calvin and Hobbes has a very illustrative style, but Marvel had that kind of Sal Buscema house style that happened, and I just saw it, and seeing Spider-Man rendered like that was just amazing. And then my parents bought me one of the Power Records. You know what a Power Record is?
I don't think so.
So Power Records was a company that did audio recordings of comic books, and so the audio was on the record, and then you got a huge comic book that was record sized with it. So I got the Spider-Man one. John Romita Sr. had done the cover of Spider-Man. I think the interiors were someone like Al Milgrom or someone like that.
Yeah.
But still, it was a great Marvel late 70s house style. And I just fell in love with the art form. So I'd seen it in black and white, and I saw it in color in this Power Records, and I was like, I need to do comic books. This is the thing I'm going to do. And I think pretty much, and that's 7 or 8. I'm pretty young, and just from there on, I just always drew in a comic book style. And, I ended up going to the Orange County High School of the Arts for visual art.
Nice.
I've learned how to paint and photography and sculpt and do lithography and things like that. And always I would goof around with comic books, and every art school, back in the 80s and 90s, early 90s, by the time I get to college, comic books were still a very throwaway art form. It was the thing you did embarrassingly, on the periphery of your actual formal art education, because art teachers at most schools thought it was a shit form. Sorry, can I swear?
Of course.
Okay,
yeah,
cool.
That's fine.
Yeah, they thought it was a shit form. They just there was no that's kids stuff. Serious artists don't do comic books.
Yeah, they didn't appreciate it.
And I'd always just done that, and so I ended up getting a degree in graphic design because I didn't want to be a starving artist. Started working at various ad agencies and stuff, and then a job opened up at a comic book company. And I actually, in the interim, I learned how to tattoo and tattooed for a few years too.
Oh, really?
I still tattoo, but yeah, the tattoo shop actually is integral too, because I had kind of everyone does that on again, off again with comic books. Is that a ukulele? It's fantastic. We got background music, guys. I had been kind of on an off-again period of comics when I started tattooing, and it just so happened that shop was next to a comic book store. And tattooing is a lot of hours of boredom, so I would just walk over to the comic book store and grab a bunch of issues, and it really got me back into reading comics and stuff. And so then I got a job at some ad agencies, And then I ended up getting a job at a comic book company doing graphic design work, but then eventually started doing more and more kind of illustrations here and there and stuff. And it really got me into the art. It taught me a lot about the industry. And so by the time 2008 rolls around and I'm on my own, it's like I feel like I could make a go at comics. So, yeah. I guess that's the long version of my origin story.
No, it's good. I love these stories. Right, see everyone's journey.
Cool.
And your parents were very supportive over the years of it?
They were. My mom's father was an artist. He worked for Disney before the strike, and I think he left during the strike in the 50s, I want to say, and then never returned. But he was a fine artist. My mother, a very creative woman. My dad's a musician. They're both very creative people. And so when I showed a knack for art, and I was just, I guess at the risk of sounding immodest, it was just very good very early, and so it was undeniable that like this was a thing that I was going to do, and so much so that like when the Orange County High School of the Arts started up, like I attended the second year as an existence, and because I had been like in 8th grade when it started, and so they're like, oh, this is an avenue for you. They were supportive, but it was also a world without the internet, right? So you can't like how to become a comic artist, how to become any kind of professional artist seemed very kind of a vague, amorphous notion to them, and so they supported me in the things that I did. I think they worried about me, but I don't think they ever worried that my talent wouldn't carry me to some level of success.
Yeah.
So they were never like, you need to get a real job and this is a hobby. Like, no, they were also like, you need to figure out a way to make your talent pay the bills.
Yeah.
But they were never like, this is just a hobby. So yeah, it was good to be in a supportive family. I mean, for a thing that they kind of don't understand, they were very supportive of. They were very supportive muggles of this magician who was going to go off to make his way in the world. So. Yeah, they were great. Yeah.
Good, perfect. Yeah. And let's talk about your comic book a little bit. Mano del Destino.
It's La Mano del Destino.
La Mano del Destino.
Yeah. You speak Spanish?
No, unfortunately.
Okay. Yeah, mine se habla un poquito y es muy malo, like very terrible. So yeah, for whatever reason, it should like rule-wise, it should be El Mano, like just the way that it's because it ends in an O, it's masculine. But for whatever reason, it's always la mano. Like if you look at a bathroom sign, it's lave las manos, like wash your hands. It's las manos and la manos. I don't know why that rule is different from mano, but it is. I get a lot of like proper Spanish speakers like saying, shouldn't it be El? And I'm like, no, it's la for whatever. Like if you look at the loteria card, like you know what loteria cards are? Yeah. So the loteria cards, la mano. Weird thing. So anyway, it's La Mano del Destino. But,
okay.
Right, continue.
Let's talk about that. Yeah.
Okay.
So could you tell us a little bit about your comic? Now I absolutely love luchadors, and I've always like followed them. Whether it's in WWE or WCW or anything like that. And I just immediately when I saw it on your website, I was just like done. Like I need to. Yeah.
Oh, cool. I love Lucha Libre. Like they were my part. So I'd go to like LA and stay with my grandparents over the summers, and I would watch Lucha Libre on TV. And then I would see like the old El Santo movies on the Spanish language station, and Mil Mascaras and Blue Demon and those guys. And I just had a love for them, and I knew that they were inherently Mexican heroes. Being a Chicano kid, like I'm Mexican or Chicano. I say Chicano because I'm American born for sure. So being a Chicano kid, growing up, and it was a rarity that we had Mexican heroes or Chicano heroes.
Yeah.
And so, but I knew these guys were of my culture and for me essentially. And I just loved them. I mean, they're bigger than life, and they're costumed and they're flamboyant and over the top, and they were very comic book come to life, right?
Yeah.
And so I loved them as a kid, and then they hadn't really permeated American pop culture for the longest time, and maybe 10, 15 years ago, like just here and there you would see like luchadors in stuff, but it was always like a slightly skewed version of what they should be. Like the colors weren't as bright. They were taking their mask off every few minutes or so. Hold on, I'm gonna take a drink.
Of course.
They were taking their masks off every 5 minutes, and they never wrestled. And so, the more that I would see Lucha Libre in American pop culture, it was always kind of a punchline. And then, more importantly, like Latino culture, when shown in American pop culture, even that dude in Ant-Man is kind of a joke, right?
Exactly, yeah.
It's always this kind of like dim-witted Mexican, and as a Latino, as a Chicano, really bums me out when I see like my culture is always kind of shown as like a punchline. Like you see like a luchador and he's like a hitman or something, or like a thug for somebody, and it's like, and it's always kind of like, look at this fucking guy, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I'm like, no, not look at this fucking guy. Like that's a dude, that's a hero, man. Like this guy shouldn't be just like punchlines. And so I just kind of kept saying to myself, like, someone needs to do a comic where, like, the wrestling's important. Someone needs to do a comic where Latino culture is portrayed in a positive light. Someone needs to do a comic in Mexico where it's not in fucking sepia tone.
Yeah,
right? Think about every movie you see, from that new James Bond movie, Spectre, to Breaking Bad. When they cut to Mexico, it's brown and sepia tone. And they just make Mexico look dirty and brown and washed out. I'm like, have you been to fucking Mexico? It is bright and vibrant.
Very
and
beautiful.
It is colors everywhere. And the Day of the Dead festival, they show, like, Inspector was all brown and dirty. I'm like, have you seen a Day of the Dead spectacle? Like, those parades, man, like, those calacas have, like, neon pinks and purples. And it is, like, festive and happy. So I just wanted, I just kind of kept saying, like, someone needs to do all of these things right. And then I was like, hey, I'm someone. You should just do it, So, like, I did, drew a little 8-page kind of thing. It was actually a portfolio piece I had done, because I'd gone to San Diego Comic-Con, like, right when I lost my job. I'd gone there to try to get other work, and I had, like, sample pages of all the stuff I had done, and I had one single image of this luchador, and without fail, every editor I showed it to would be like, "Oh, that's cool. You should do something with that." I'm like, "I got a dumb little story I want to do with it," and like, "Well, maybe flesh that out." So the next year I went back to San Diego. I had like 8 pages of it, and again, they would look at my other stuff, and then they would be like, "Dude, this Lucha Libre stuff is cool. You should do this." And then I had an editor kind of go like, "Maybe we want to do a book of this. So put an issue together. We'll see what it looks like." I'm okay. Did a full issue of it. He dug it, shopped it around. He was like a VP at the company he was with, but he couldn't find an editor who had the bandwidth to kind of take it on. So then I shopped it up to other companies. All these guys loved it, but it was like a little too niche for them. They're like, I got a lot of glowing rejection letters where they're like, "This is amazing. We love the color. We love the action. We unfortunately can't take it on." And then at the end they'd be like, "But you should self-publish this. If no one takes us on, self-publish it. This needs to be in the world." And guys like Bob Schreck told me that and stuff. So at some point I was like, I got a lot of no's. And then I was like, I can't just do this myself. And then it gets to be what I want it to be. Like, I don't have to compromise the Latino nature of it, because I think the pension, and I think part of the reason that some of these things in Lucha Libre and American pop culture, I think they happen because I think they get anglified because the studios are trying to hedge their bet. They're trying to, like, well, we want to show Lucha Libre, but we kind of got to bend it to where, like, Anglos will enjoy it. Whereas my opinion on those sort of things are, like, people respond to authenticity. So if I just lean into being Latino, like, the Latinos will dig it, and people who love Lucha Libre, people who love wrestling, and people who know what Lucha Libre should be will dig on it. And then that gravity of those people congregating around the idea will pull in maybe Anglos and people who necessarily aren't into Lucha Libre, but they'll appreciate it for its authenticity, and not because it was kind of catering to their already preconceived notions of what comics should be. So, yeah, I mean, it's that was what I set out to do, was just kind of like I could have easily called it something like El Revenjo or something like that, like an anglified, kind of Spanish amalgamation of words. But I decided deliberately to call it La Mano Del Destino. So there's a slight barrier to entry there. It's like, if you're not okay with this being full-on Latino enough to be called La Mano Del Destino, then it's not for you. And I'm okay for it not being for people. So yeah. So I think I wandered away from the question a bit.
No, you're good.
All right, cool,
you're
man.
Fine.
What else you got?
All right. Actually, I'll wait till.
All right.
There you go. All right, cool. Yeah, so it's interesting to hear you struggle between that thing of keeping it like a niche, like I'm going to keep it pure exactly the way I want it, and then struggling with like, well, I have to get like a demographic that's actually going to read this, So you kind of like are on the side of like, no, it's my project, I'm going to keep it, the way the artist's original vision and all that kind of stuff.
I think authenticity is the real currency in today's creative marketplace, man. The more real you can be, I think people smell a money grab. I think if you look at Artist Alley even today, if you look around, like, I feel like the days of just fan prints of guys that is kind of waning, and I think that it's more and more guys like me that are just like independent creators that have a thing that they're passionate about. And I think that fans nowadays are super savvy, and they just want like these kind of authentic niche products.
Yeah.
And it's not like being niche is my money grab. It's just that I know that I'm the authority when it comes to this kind of story because it's the one that's in my head. You know what I mean? And I can do anything I want with it, and I'm not going to be like, oh, zombies are hot, so now La Mano has to fight zombies. You know what I mean? It's like I knew the story I laid out, and I think that the things that seem to really succeed these days are those things that are just kind of true realizations of a single artist's vision. You know what I mean? And I feel like things that get kind of workshopped and noted to death really fail. Like you look at a guy like a comedian like John Mulaney, who's super funny, has a real distinct point of view. He goes to Fox, he puts a show on, and it gets noted to death, and lots of compromises are made. And the show lasts like 3 episodes. But then you take something like Louis and his show, And he comes off a show that had been noted to death, the HBO show.
Yeah.
And he goes to FX, and he's like, no, this is going to be the thing. Like, his first few episodes are kind of like very funny driven, but like the later episodes, it's like, I only kind of remember 2 funny parts in that show. The rest of it kind of dramatic and like a bummer, you know what I mean? But somehow it's compelling television.
Yeah, it
and then he
feels
goes
real,
off and he does like Horace and Pete, which is super depressing. You know what I mean? And it's like, but they're such a clear vision of what it is he wanted to do. And I think clarity of vision is really, and authenticity is really what's gonna get you across in an artist alley full of people who are just selling fan prints, you know. But like I said, I think more and more of those guys are realizing, it's got to be me on the table and not necessarily characters that are recognizable. And so I don't know. I'm sorry. I think I wandered away from that question
too. You're good. Now, a lot of times, as artists or anyone who is creative, there are times where you like hit like a wall or a block, whether it's the physical drawings or writing or anything like that. What do you usually do to counter those situations?
I do a couple things. So I work as a freelance graphic designer and illustrator. So I'm on the clock to be creative.
Yeah.
And I've been working in advertising and graphic design for 25 years at this point. That seems long. That can't be right. I think it's true though. So I have to sit down and produce, whether I'm feeling it or not, for products I may or may not care about. And sometimes you just got to sit down. And so what I do sometimes is, if I don't have it, I will try to do the bad ideas. And I'm like, I got to expel the bad ideas.
Oh, interesting.
And so I'm just like, I know these are terrible, but I'm just going to get in the motion of putting stuff on paper. And sometimes it's like, I'm just going to make this as bad as possible.
Yeah.
And then in doing that, it clears out some of the garbage in my head, and I get to the good stuff. Other times I'll do things like I'll try to draw with my left hand, because the left hand is more right-brained and it's more creative focused. And even though I can't draw with my left hand, I'm just really focusing on that hemisphere of my brain that maybe unlocks a little bit of stuff. I also have a guitar that I'll bring down, and I'll just like play guitar and just work on songs that I know how to play, and that kind of gets me in a creative groove.
Yeah.
And then other times I just start looking through stuff that will inspire me. I've got a pretty extensive library of Jack Kirby material.
Oh, nice.
And anyone who's seen my artwork know that I worship at the altar of Jack Kirby, right? It's totally apparent. I get it. I've had people kind of come at me sideways, like kind of thinking like I'm not going to acknowledge that I'm ripping off Jack Kirby. Look, if you're going to rip somebody off, make sure it's the best, right?
I mean, I think all art is like, from something, your inspirations, and you take it and make it your own.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
But so I've got this like library of Jack Kirby stuff, and I'll just grab any Fourth World Omnibus or Jack Kirby Read or something, and just open it up and just. There's always something new to be discovered that Jack was messing around with, and there's that kind of typical style that people think of when they think of Kirby. But if you look at some of the things, it's like you see him experimenting and pushing the boundaries of even what he was doing, and you're like, oh, what was he trying to do with that? And I kind of try to get in his head, and I'm like, oh, he was trying to just like silhouette it but reverse out lines, and like that's something you don't really think of. That's like more of a McFarlane trick than it is like a Kirby trick. But but Kirby actually tried it in some places, and you're like, but the Kirby version of like a silhouette with white lines on it is way different than something Todd would do.
Yeah.
And so I kind of like take that in. And I'm like, start maybe working on some silhouette stuff that's kind of like more in my style, but silhouetted with like naked outlines and stuff. And eventually something comes,
Yeah.
And then some days I just got to get away. Sometimes as an artist you just got to get out in the world that you're trying to reflect. So, so yeah.
It's good advice, yeah.
Thanks, man. Yeah.
And in the future, no doubt, your comic will one day become like either a television series or a movie of some kind. What actor do you believe would be the main protagonist or antagonist?
Right now there is a guy named... oh God, I can never remember his name now.
Is there any other pieces of work he's been in?
He's the guy who's the boxer in that movie called Love Ranch. It's Joe Pesci and Helen Mirren. I want to say his last name is like Pancetta or Panella or that sounds like just a restaurant. He's a Spanish actor.
Yeah.
I want to say Sergio's his first name, maybe Sergio. Anyway, he's got a hyphenated last name, 2 last names, as most Spaniards do.
Yeah.
But he's a big dude, but he's not cut. He's just a big, like Latino guy.
Yeah.
Or I guess he's Hispanic because he's from Spain, so he's a big Hispanic guy. I like him. I want a slightly older guy. I want a dude. He's got a great voice and presence too. I want a guy who can really convey himself through voice and presence, because he's going to be masked, and he'd be okay not having his face be shown.
Yeah.
And God, I usually know that guy's name off the top of my head. Part of me just wants to look it up real quick, but I think it's Sergio's his first name. He's in Love Ranch. He's been in a couple other action movies. He does speak English, but I want like a guy who's got like an accent too.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and I honestly, I just want a guy who can handle the athleticism of it, but not be six-packed and like completely ripped. I want him to be big, but not ripped.
Yeah.
So I think that it's more of a presence than anything. A stoicism. I see La Mano as very stoic in how he presents himself, even when he's kind of in the midst of the turmoil and he's kind of like having to train and push himself. Like there's a stoicism to him. He's very because he's been through a lot. I mean, have you read the comic, right? So. I mean, to get that level of success that he's had, he really started at the bottom, so he understands kind of a level of humility. And then even within the comic, there's a certain amount of humility that is thrust upon him. And so he's a guy who's bore a lot but done it with dignity. And I feel like he's got a moral code that is fairly incorruptible. And I want that to all come across with just kind of like the stature of the man. So,
yeah.
Perfect. So yeah. That's who I think. So that guy, Sergio, look him up. Love Ranch. He's the boxer that's in that movie.
Okay.
Whatever his name is.
And this is a bit of a silly question.
Okay.
But in an alternate universe, you're either a hero or a villain, whichever. And you're about to save the world or destroy the world or take it over.
Okay.
Which two characters, either that you created or any other character in any universe, would you have by your side to help you either defend or take over the world?
I'd say I'd have to defend the world, and it would be Spider-Man for sure. And then, the second one is probably. It's a real good question. I'd have to say Buona Beast. Yeah, I love. I have thoughts for Buona Beast that I really want to redeem that character.
Yeah.
I know he was in The Brave and the Bold and he was pretty great, but I think those would be just like, I love obscure like D-list
superheroes.
Random superheroes, and Buona Beast is my go-to. That like I've said his name so many times, and so many people know that I want to do stuff with him that I feel eventually I'm going to get to do the Buona Beast story that I want to be. So Spider-Man and Buona Beast, we're going to save the world. Absolutely.
Very nice.
Yeah.
And talking about your world a little bit, for your comic, would you say that it is more realistic and down to earth, or do you have plans to make it like El Santo, where it's going to go into a more fantastic direction as far as like different myth creatures?
Go ahead. Sorry. I like to think of it as magical realism. So there's a few bit of the mystical power that he gets, or mysterious power that he gets, is very ill-defined. I like the idea of unstable molecules, or kind of whatever you want them to be. But I don't want monsters or zombies or anything, because I feel like that's kind of been done to death. Those Jorge Cruz comics for El Santo from the 60s, they're all amazing and they exist. They're not going to get much better than that. A guy named Rafael Navarro does a book called Sonombolo, and he fights like werewolves and stuff. And I'm not going to be better than Rafael at doing a luchador comic. So I kind of like the magical realism of the world I created. I always make my world akin to like Lucha Libre in La Mano's world is what auto racing is in Speed Racer's world. It's a world in which it's the most important thing, and if you read the comic, you see how it's been elevated to the status that it is. So it's just kind of like Elseworld 60s Mexico that was like a little swankier than, but it's the swanky Mexico of those Lucha Libre movies. Like, you look at an old Santo Blue Demon movie, and the apartment they're in is like way swankier than Mexico ever got. So it was this facade they created to kind of like look like American films, But the American films were also heightening their level of swankiness, and so I always call it like a jet age Mexico. It's like what Mexico would have looked like if it had been as prosperous as the U.S. post World War II. Like what that looks like 1964. That's the world that I want it to be in. So it's already a little different than the world that we know. It's Mexico's a little swanky. It's also a Mexico that's very obsessed with Lucha Libre in a very real and integrated way. And so I think that's enough of a disconnect from reality that I can do some fun stuff. But I don't, and there's like mysterious power, it's really strong, right? I don't need anyone to fly. I don't need anyone to shoot lasers out of their eyes. I don't need dudes with wings. I don't need teleportation or aliens or zombies or monsters. I feel like it's just real enough to make the struggles personal, and I don't need to raise the stakes to the world is going to end. I feel like the stake raising is this arms race that's gotten to, we're going to undo the universe now. And at some point it's like, well, if existence, is is at stake here, then like how much higher can you get than
exactly.
that? I mean, like the last Marvel event was like, weren't they like collapsing alternate universes into each other? And so yeah,
for readers, it's exhausting to see that and be like, I don't think, how can you go from here?
I want these to be very personal, like story. Like I'm obsessed with the idea of identity and destiny, which is why it's like La Mano Del Destino. It's the hand of destiny. Like I'm just obsessed with those ideas, and so I feel like those are best expressed through personal stories. And in them being very personal and finite, they almost become universal.
Okay.
As opposed to speaking of the universe, and then it kind of somehow limiting to like how personal that can feel to you.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Right on.
Right.
And what advice do you have for aspiring artists or writers or anything like that? However, usually when I ask this question, the first response is like, don't ever give up and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
What advice can you give a step further than that? Whether it's like one rapper had said, like, find a mentor who's doing what you want to do but better, and then follow them, or and all that kind of stuff.
Advice.
Yeah.
My big advice would be don't be afraid to fail.
Okay.
Do stuff you know you're going to screw up, and be okay with that. I mean, do some stuff that you know isn't going to really see the light of day. Just like exercise. And also just remember you don't need permission to do this stuff. You can just do comic books, man. Like you don't need to. Don't wait for someone to tell you that you're a comic book artist. Like, just sit down and create a comic book if you want to be a comic book artist, or just sit down and create art if you want to be an artist. It's like, you don't need permission to be a creative, in this day and age. Movies, maybe, you know what I mean? Like, you need a certain amount of equipment and what have you. But a lot of creative endeavors, you can just do it, And most places, comic book wise, like if they're gonna hire a comic artist, they're hiring someone who's done a thing already. So no one's gonna hire you for the thing you plan on doing. Someone will hire you for the things that you've done.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. Like no one cares about it. No one cares about your intent. They care about your results.
The actual product.
Yeah, exactly. So just do stuff, you know, and you learn every time, and then don't be afraid to screw up.
Perfect.
And, like, do stuff just to screw up. Push yourself in directions that
like you had said, when you get to a writer's block or anything like that, just do the worst thing or the thing you're fearing the most, and then move on from there.
Just move on. Yeah, for sure. Sorry that was really high pitched. I'm going through puberty again. Apparently,
you're good. Where can we find you online to follow you and all the things you're going to be doing in the future?
Well, you can go to my personal site, which is jgonzodesigns.com, which is the letter J, Gonzo Designs with an S at the end there, .com. And then it has links over to castleandkeypublications.com, which is where La Mano lives. And then Castle and Key, and I think even J Gonzo, they might have links. I'm not sure if J Gonzo Designs has links to my social media, but castleandkeypublications.com, which is a lot to type in, and I'm sorry. So it's castleandkeypublications.com. There's links to my social media there. But you can look up like La Mano on Facebook, La Mano Del Destino on Facebook, and you should get to my page. You can look up like J Gonzo Art on Instagram, and I believe they have a Twitter on that too. At La Mano Comic is my Twitter as well. So there's tons of stuff. I think if you Google search me, I come up pretty well. I've been around long enough that I'll feed into their algorithm. So, and if you find one thing, I usually will link back to the others. And stuff, so it's a pretty good stuff going on.
Perfect. All right. Well, thank you again for joining us and everything, and it was awesome getting to talk to you.
Yeah, thanks, man. It was great talking to you. All right.
Me paré, caminé, me subí, me fui contra la corriente y también me perdí, fracasé, me encontré, lo viví y aprendí. Cuando te pega fuerte, más profundo es el beat, sí. Sigo bailando y escribiendo mis letras, sigo cantando con las puertas